Now, that was a very simple demonstration, but effective. And the reason this works is due to the physics of water. Water always seeks and finds its level. The surface of water is always level. And it does not matter the shape of the container, the surface of the water will always be level. The fact that there is no level surface on a sphere is the reason the baseball didn't flood. But according to science, Earth is a sphere, and is much larger than a baseball, but a sphere is still a sphere. Without a level surface, water doesn't gather. Yet, we have many bodies of water on Earth with perfectly level, flat, and still surfaces. We have salt flats in Utah that cover 40 square miles of land that are perfectly flat. They are so perfectly flat that when it rains, the water is able to cover the surface, creating a perfect mirror image of the sky. Now, this should be impossible on a spherical Earth. NASA gives us the measurements of curvature at 8 inches per mile square. That means for every mile, there should be 8 inches of curvature present. So for a 40-mile stretch of land, according to the calculation given to us by the scientific community, there should be 1,060 feet of curvature. However, those 40 square miles of salt flats in Utah have zero curvature. They're perfectly flat. And we'll talk more about curvature later. So let's get back to the flood. How did the Earth flood if it is a sphere? Maybe we're asking the wrong question. Perhaps we should ask, what does Scripture tell us about the shape of the Earth? If we trust what the Scriptures tell us, and we should, it is circular in shape and carved into the face of the deep. That alone destroys the globe deception that we have been fed. It also has a firmament, a solid dome, over it, which acts as an enclosure. The engraving of the circle would have created a recess or walls that surround the Earth. And that makes perfect sense when we think about the fact that water needs a container and the fact that the seas have boundaries set for them. Let's take a look at the Hebrew cosmological model, and I think you'll see that it differs greatly from what we expect based on our current heliocentric model. As you can see here, the Hebrew model has the Earth set upon pillars. And then those pillars are called the foundations of the Earth. You've got the waters below the firmament, which would be our seas. You have the firmament with the sun and the moon and the stars. Then you have the waters above the firmament, and at the very top, according to this model, is the heaven of heavens, the divine dwelling. As we know from other sources, there's more than one firmament, and things are laid out a little bit differently, but this was the general understanding to whoever created this graphic. And when we read the scripture for exactly what it says, it's not difficult to understand why the Hebrew people had this concept of cosmology. In fact, almost all civilizations had a similar concept. For thousands of years, this was the understood model of Earth. Different cultures called heaven and hell different things, different words for firmament, different ideas of a foundation, but the concept was the same. And it wasn't until about 600 or 700 years ago that the heliocentric model was adopted. So why for thousands of years was a biblical concept of the cosmos accepted, and then suddenly, a few hundred years ago, it got changed? And I'll answer that question in a later episode. For now, let's stick to the flood. If we turn to an extra biblical text, we can gain more supporting evidence for the Hebrew model as well as the biblical description of Earth and the cosmos. Now, I'm going to look at a passage from the book of Enoch describing the flood. So, before we get started, if you find yourself asking, why am I using a book that's not in the Bible? Why am I pulling from the book of Enoch? I'm going to link a video that I have where I had a discussion with a pastor concerning biblical canon and how we got the canon we have today versus what it was prior to, and some of the things that transpired to make sure that Enoch was removed. So if you want to check that out, I think it's a great discussion that may clear up some questions for you and explain why I believe that the book of Enoch is scripture.